My name is Clint Schaff. François, we're just meeting for the first time today. I'm the host of Hip Hop Hello, a radio show that started on KOBV, Bentonville Community Radio. We're here right now in the Boombox in downtown Bentonville, A Street Market. And I'm talking with a guest today, special guest. We don't do a lot of in-person interviews on Hip Hop Hello, unfortunately. Today we've got a music legend in the house, François Kevorkian, also known as François K. François, thanks for coming on and joining me on Hip Hop Hello.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Yes, indeed.
I love it. Well, you do a lot of different things, François. It's funny when someone's like a multi-hyphenate creator. You're a DJ, producer, engineer. You, I guess, dance music is probably how I would describe it because you've elevated through and migrated through different genres of dance music in your career. It sounds like. I want to give you the opportunity to define yourself. Like, who is François K? How do you want to define yourself?
Look, if I knew, I would be retired because I'd be very comfortable knowing exactly what, the deal was. And to be quite honest, I hate to take an adversarial stance, but being that I've pretty much been doing this for almost 50 years.
Yeah, half a century.
And still managing to kind of stay current and not just excited, but motivated. I think the answer to your question is more, what is it that I am not?
Okay.
Because if I'm to look at the arc of my career, certainly I could find so many inflection points where it was clear that I kind of changed and moved from one thing to something slightly different, or wearing so many different hats, whether it was because I decided to strike it out on my own and get my own production company, or whether it's that I decided to start a commercial recording studio operation in Manhattan, or whether it's that I decided to start a record label and a publishing company, or whether it's that, I decided to completely shift what I was doing. At one point I stopped DJing for quite a long time, for almost 8 years, and then I resumed and I started again. And, so basically having done it for that long and having worn that many hats, I think it's fair to say that I'm not necessarily someone who can easily be defined.
Right.
Certain artists. I mean, let's look at it in a sort of downright, brutal manner. Most artists or people who call themselves, air quotes, artists nowadays have a shelf life of 3 to 5 years. Is that what we see out there? I'd say that's probably, for a large percentage of people who try to break through and make a career as artists, 3 to 5 years, the shelf life I see. I've been doing it for almost a half a century. So without that, I believe that I might find myself in a similar predicament and be like, roadkill, discarded and left behind on the highway of success and whatever else, So I'm sorry, I'm not able to define who I am.
I love that. I think that's undefinable. The undefinable François K, kicking it here in Bentonville, Arkansas. And I think, honestly, we'll get to this a little bit later, but that's really an inspiration for all of us in that, everyone wants to maintain relevance throughout the whole lifespan of their life. And you do that in the tradition of, some of the great artists and I think of like a Bowie or somebody, but you're doing that in so many ways yourself, but even more, maybe a more diverse set of business sides of the business, which is really fantastic.
I think it's not so much sort of what I would call the new approach where people tend to measure success by quote-unquote relevance or amount of social media followers or whatever. I think what it boils down to, at least in my case, and I can't speak for others, is just curiosity having an inquisitive mind and always finding new topics of interest. I think that may be the secret to that. Like, say, for example, I became super interested in all sorts of AI things, not last month. I was into it 4 years ago, and I spent an enormous amount of time learning, like right before the pandemic and during the first few months of the pandemic. I saw it not just as an opportunity, but as a necessity, because I was so fascinated by all the possibilities that some of these new AI tools were providing us. This was 3.5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So just an example. So, maybe that's what keeps me interested and motivated to keep going, whereas maybe some other people just give up. I don't know. I don't have that answer for you.
Well, I love that. I love that. I learned a little bit about you. You played actual instruments, drums, and stuff like that. And then in the '70s, came from France to New York. Were early in the DJ world, and then obviously very successful as a producer. I think it's a gift to all of us that you, I guess, found your way into electronic music, because a lot of people think of that as future music, which is always evolving and changing. And that we have an upcoming festival here in Bentonville. That's what brings you to town.
Yes.
It's called Momentous. It's an electronic music festival. It's all going down March 9th, and there's all kinds of great acts. There's actually an official pre-party the night before, March 8th, and you'll be playing there along with Don Brantz and several other acts. You tell us a little about how you feel about coming to Bentonville again. I think you've been here before, and to put on this great EDM festival here in the middle of the country.
Well, I have to say, even though the first year I was participating in Format Festival was out in the fields, the second year, when we moved to Momentary, I was not prepared for how much I was going to fall in love with the place. And what I mean by that is, may not be just Momentary itself, but maybe more the Crystal Bridges and Momentary unit, so to speak. But I'm generally very sensitive to design, and when I see things that are put together in a way that demonstrates thoughtfulness and a clear sense of purpose and whatever else, I'm just enjoying that so much, because I think obviously it's the fruit of a great group of people and very talented designers and architects and conceptualists and curators, all of that coming together and becoming reality, I think is one of the most exhilarating feelings I could ever claim to experience on a daily basis, because all too often, as a touring DJ or as someone who visits places around the world, I must confess that so many of them are truly what I would call substandard when it comes to sound quality or the experience, the auditory experience and all that. And walking for the first time in the Roadhouse was just like my jaw just dropped. And I felt like I was home. Like, this is the kind of environment that I thrive to be involved with, because obviously whoever built it, they're up to a standard of quality that is kind of very rare. And at least in my case, I truly, truly appreciate that. So I just fell in love with the place. That really is the long and the short of it. And as such, I am chomping at the bit at any opportunity to do anything in there I can, because even though I'm not really at liberty to talk in detail too much about it, I'm hopeful that they're doing some audio upgrades and other improvements that are going to only make the experience more meaningful and powerful and truly remarkable. So I'm so looking forward to that.
Oh, that's amazing. We're looking forward to that too. Obviously, this is one of the fastest growing cities in America. Crystal Bridges and Momentary are a key part of that growth, and as a magnet of talent, of people who want to enjoy the arts and music and culture. Back to Momentous for a moment again, the pre-party March 8th, the big festival March 9th. Tickets are at themomentary.org. And you can find that on also a link on Hip Hop Hello's channels at Hip Hop Hello NWA on Instagram. But what can we expect from a François K live DJ set? You have all kinds of music online. There's like a billion sets on YouTube. I've had the chance to go watch. What can we expect when we see you throw down on March 8th?
Well, part of what I've been doing recently is sometimes I do what is called live stems mixes, where I actually DJ not from normal recordings that are stereo, but I DJ from multi-tracks, so I can do live remixes of certain songs.
Cool.
In front of people, like improvised, and it's kind of a unique, never repeated type of performance. Some of that might happen.
Nice.
And I also think there's going to be some very interesting collaboration situations with some musicians that are going to be done partly in surround sound in the Roadhouse, where we're taking advantage of the incredible immersive capabilities of that sound system in there. And I think a part of it is also just going to be some plain old dance music.
Yeah.
So I don't like to generally be too specific about what I do, because to some degree I kind of always leave the door open for a little bit of spur of the moment kind of inspiration, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be a party.
I love that. I love that improvisational approach to it. That's kind of counter to maybe unfair but negative stereotype of some electronic DJs, like they're basically making a playlist and hitting play and using technology to kind of premix it. That's the opposite of what you're talking about. That's cool too, right? But
I should just show up wearing a helmet and push a button and have people pay me to do that. And, once in a while, raise my hands up, signifying that I am one with the audience. And maybe that's, for them, it's part of what DJing represents. But I think for me, I'm trying to be as connected with the people who come. But then again, maybe I'm showing my age. The older generation of DJs tend to value people who dance rather than people who stand around with their mobile phones up to post it on Instagram. But hey, not saying that it's necessarily that bad to do this, but I'm hopeful that some among those who will come at that time will be there to dance and to enjoy the music, not just as window dressing to their Instagram experience, but actually to get into it, because that's really where I personally feel I thrive the most, when I'm able to interact with and vibe with the audience, and then this energy exchange happens, and it makes it so sweet and so special. So
yeah, no doubt. Well, I'll be there. I'm not going to be clout chasing on social. I'm going to be there to boogie. What? There's a lot of great artists on the roster on the March 8th official pre-party. Yourself, Dom Brantz, Samir Chatterjee, and the Chandrayan Indian Ensemble. What can we expect that night in terms of the flow?
Well, thing about classical Indian music is that it really has an incredible atmosphere and thread of its own. It really, once you're hooked into that, you could just listen to it for hours, literally, and it's so hypnotic in a way. So they're going to be hopefully playing a not too short set that will allow people to really get in the zone with that. Once their performance of the ensemble is over, then Samir is going to do we're going to do a special tabla solo, and I'm going to do some extra processing on top of what he does to rechannel his performance through an immersive surround sound system, and probably add some little touches to it to sort of make it an improvised collaborative thing. I think that, it's going to be one of those moments where hopefully people understand that music has no boundaries, and we're constantly trying to push the envelope by making such collaborations and experimenting a little bit. So I'm very, very much looking forward to that. I think that it's probably going to be the kind of show where those who missed out are going to say, oh man, and it's like, yes, you had to be there.
Well, definitely folks got to be there on March 8th for that official pre-party to see that unique collaboration. You talked about the interaction with the crowd and how you might even you're gonna adjust what you're doing live based on the reaction you're gonna have with the people of Bentonville and of Northwest Arkansas and from surrounding areas who are coming to the show. What is the role of the crowd in a François K set?
I mean, without a crowd, what are you doing? You can't do anything without them. So basically, I think in a very humble manner, at least my interpretation of it is that the DJ really serves the dancers. That's it. You just adapt to that, whatever form it takes. You know, I can like go veer all the way from left to right to whatever. I have drum and bass, I have dubstep, I have techno, I have reggae, I have whatever it feels like I want to play that would seem like the audience would react to, you know. And I don't necessarily want to limit myself to a very specific mindset, because I think that truly is kind of sad in a way. Not to say that it isn't exactly what some other people thrive at doing, but that's what they do, and I'm happy for them. But in my case, I like the idea that I'm never too sure of exactly what's going to happen, because that can lead to some very happy accidents that would never happen otherwise.
I love that, happy accidents, and I think that's probably key to not the music not becoming derivative from one thing to the next. It's always growing, evolving. You talked about, and I want to just recognize how cool that is that you're talking about taking stems from tracks and doing live, like, you know, studio style producer mixes live in front of audiences, improvisationally. That is so cool.
Well, I got to be honest with you. You know, it takes me a great deal of time to create the elements, to separate the tracks into elements and all that. So that's done with some AI programs that are becoming pretty commonplace nowadays. When I started doing it, I was so excited. Like, look, yeah, I could do this, I could do that. And then I realized, reality check, 90% of the crowd had no idea what I was doing, or didn't care, or whatever. It was just like there was a gap, and I'm finding that actually making the stuff and performing it is the easy part. The harder part is actually to convey it to people and make them understand that maybe there's something interesting to watch, because I'm really doing it live. It's like, I want to drop the drums, I just want to go to the vocal a cappella and do some nice dubby effects and add the guitar, then put the bass in. I could do it all, but I think people are just so conditioned to respond to this idea that the DJ is the person who presses play. Right. And, you know, so it's kind of, sometimes I try not to have too many expectations, in the sense that I realize it takes quite a long time to get some of that to people, to get them to understand or comprehend or absorb some new paradigms. But for me personally, I can honestly tell you that no matter, if I'm going to be very selfish about it, it's like a game changer. Here I am. I'm able to show up at a DJ gig, as long as I have my hardware, my controllers to do these stems. I can literally do a new version of a song right in front of you at that moment. It's like, you know, if I'm thinking back of what it was like in the glory days of disco when I was DJing in 1982, for example, had someone told me that this would be available 40 years later, I would have been like, no, you're kidding. No, that's not possible. Yeah, you know, I hate to appear like that, because I mean, a lot of people think, well, he's an old guy, you know. Yeah, he likes playing vinyl. Actually, I don't. I was playing vinyl in 1982. That was good back then, because that's all we had. But the same sequence of saying, what about if I was back at that time and someone went in 1982 and told me, you see what you're playing right now? Well, 40 years down the road, people are going to say it's so incredibly cool again. And I would go, what? You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
But this is what's happening. There's a whole section of the population, I guess that's like hipsterism. They somehow became convinced that playing from vinyl is so much better. Okay, that's great for them, but obviously it's not how things have worked out for me. I kind of try to move and stay ahead of using all the creative tools and possibilities that are available today, rather than confine myself to nostalgia and thrive on an easy, because trust me, it's easy enough for me to go in front of people with 2 boxes of vinyl and go, oh wow, look how cool. That's not what it's about. I think that DJing has changed, and if anything, even if 90% of the people that watch me do these things don't understand it, it's kind of my duty to show them. At least sometimes things take a long time to trickle down. At least if I show it to someone like I do on my streams. I mean, obviously, when I stream on Twitch, I have a sizable following. When the people go on the stream and they see me like right in front, because the camera is aimed right at the controllers, they can clearly see that I'm doing a live remix.
Yeah.
And I could tell over the 2.5 years that I've been doing these stems on streams, a number of DJs and music lovers and people have come back to me and just like they rave about it, because suddenly it's opened their minds to new possibilities. Hey, even though that might only be 10% of the audience, I think there's nothing that beats that indescribable feeling that you are truly able to communicate that and pass it on to others and inspire them, and then it sparks a creative fire in them, and then they go and take that and do something with it. I don't want to take any credit for it, but I just enjoy this idea of passing things on and being able to create a thread of creative continuity. Yeah. Am I talking too much?
No, you're killing it. I want to ask, is there, speaking of that creative fire, taking it outside of music for a moment, I just think it's so cool that a lot of times those kind of innovations that we're speaking of, this live stem mixing, for example, it often comes from, a 19-year-old who's exposed to technology for the first time, or a recent, someone in their 20s. But you're not in your 20s. You've been doing this for 50 years. What is the key to like keeping it fresh? And specifically, I'm wondering how, for people listening to this, they might be a supply chain manager somewhere, or they might be a office receptionist or a student. They might not be in music. They just might be a fan of music. But how do you apply that life to stay so fresh and cool?
I already answered that question.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
I think in my case, and I can only speak for myself, not for others.
Yeah.
Is that I'm curious. I have an inquisitive mind, and I'm always fascinated by new developments. Maybe in my case, I was able to. I wrote my first email and sent it to someone in 1984.
Nice.
It was not called email. It was just CompuServe messages. I've always kind of been blessed with a fascination with technology. I think technology can be truly awful in the wrong hands, but I think if you kind of keep your distances from it and you just learn to leverage it without getting too sucked into whatever people tell you it should be, but you keep it within your understanding of what it needs to be for your needs. Technology is an essential tool, and over the course of most of those years of my career, I think that a lot of what's made a difference is that I was always very, very attuned to technology, not as an end unto itself, but as a facilitator. Technology as a tool, as a way to get particular things done. Once you learn that this is possible, this can be done, you can experiment with that, this is available, it's your choice to decide to dabble in it or not. I was, I got a Mac in 1984. I got there was no Windows, it was DOS PC in 85. I built a studio in 87 where we were offering services to our customers that included doing full electronic music setups with sequencers and all that. I was one of the first customers of the software. I came before Pro Tools. It was called Sound Designer by a company called DigiDesign. I was always on the cusp of all these things. So, in 2003, I met the people from a company called Native Instruments. They had developed a product called Traktor DJ Studio that was a piece of software that allowed you to play high-resolution audio files from your computer with a virtualized mixer and everything. And I've been using Traktor for 21 years now. As a DJ, I can't think of something else that would have helped me as much as it did to really stay at the forefront of what I'm doing. This piece of software, Traktor, is also the software that incorporates the live stems mixing, even though I could technically do it with other applications, whether it's in Ableton Live or whatever else. I mean, it all ends up being the same in the end with different hardware, different software configuration and all that. But I think the point is, in my case, for whatever reason, I always found things, because I had a recording studio, commercial, I didn't have much choice but to always pick the best piece of gear, the most performant piece of equipment that was going to be the most popular with most of my customers, because I didn't have wiggle room in the amount of money we could spend on getting new gear. So over the years of doing that, I had to develop an instinct for always picking the winner, for always picking the format that was going to be the one that was going to prevail, or the piece of gear that was going to be the one that everyone wanted to have in their session. And, the same way, even as a DJ, even though other people, the majority of people have picked a different system, it can't do a quarter of what I can do with Traktor, because it's so customizable and it has so many more options for creativity and incorporating things in my workflow that I just couldn't do with the normal, gear that other DJs use. So I said at the beginning, I'm working quite a bit with some AI applications, for example, et cetera, et cetera. I think most people, if you start having this conversation, they don't even know what AI is. To them, it's like a boogeyman or a thing, an entity that they've never had a direct interaction with, whereas in fact AI could be so many different things depending on what model you use for what application. Is it for graphics? Is it for video? Is it for audio? Is it for text treatment? Is it generalized or whatever? But in my case, because I have this curiosity, I've already been successfully able to incorporate a lot of that into my workflows. So there you go. It's so exciting. I'm at the forefront of it. When I read the news, maybe I don't want to read about, who did what on Instagram. Maybe I'm more excited by knowing, well, NVIDIA just came up with this new graphics card that has GPU that has 24 gigs of RAM instead of 16, so I can run larger language models on it that I couldn't before. Is that geeky enough?
It is. It's definitely appropriately geeky. What's interesting is you didn't use this word, but one thing I'm hearing from you is that like you're extremely collaborative, and it might be like two stems collaborating with each other or two tracks collaborating with each other. But you also, as in the studio, you're a prolific remixer, and on the production side. What if you could speak a little bit about collaboration and maybe a couple of collaborations from your great discography that stand out that people should be checking out? Maybe that we should play on the show here.
I mean, I'm not
Hard
sure
to pick
where
a
to
couple.
start with
What
that.
about an upcoming collaboration?
Oh, that'd be cool too. Yeah.
Finish this week.
I mean, it's just not a fair question. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
No, it's all right.
I just think that that really depends on the situation at hand, and it depends how it's done. But I think with regards to remixing, it's become a little bit more difficult in the sense that budgets are very, very limited. And the way work used to be done, maybe say in the 90s, typically you hire musicians to do all these parts to whatever remix or even an original production, of course. And you'd have an engineer and you'd be doing this in the studio. All this costs a lot of money. Like
Right.
I could see easily going in and spending 10, 15, $20,000 recording a song really well. You know, sometimes you get live strings player, and you know, just the live string session is going to cost you $3,000 plus the arranger, because you know you need someone to tell the string players what to play and to write the score. But all these things are out the window nowadays because people have a short attention span and reduced expectations, and unless someone is incredibly successful, they just don't have the budget to accomplish all of that. So I think at large, when it comes to production, a lot of the stuff I do mixing wise and all that is really more of a solo thing nowadays. The things where there are more collaborations is live. So in my case, and I could very easily compare myself to most of my contemporaries, I could think of at least 8 notable DJs with whom I do really, really well doing back-to-back sets.
Cool.
A back-to-back set, the way I would describe it, is not he plays for an hour, you play for an hour. A back-to-back set, you play one record each, and you keep it a musical conversation where there really is like two energies that are melding together. So again, the reason I'm going back to this is because the studio work is non-linear. It's offline, it's asynchronous.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I'm calling someone and say, hey, do me a guitar part on this track, I send them the track, they do the guitar, I get the piece back, I keep working on it. But when you're doing DJing, it's real time. It's in front of people in actual, like, real time. And I personally think that in this day and age, because everything is so computerized and formatted and boxed into categories and descriptions, it's also easy to say, oh yeah, I'm going to do a track that's going to be 135 BPM. It's going to be in, oh well, they don't even think about the key, but it's just using this sample and, you know, with that vibe like Skrillex or whatever, and that's good. Somebody, like 20 people will hear your track, will play it for 10 minutes, and then 10 minutes later, somebody else's track will come in, and your track will drown forever. Except if you're one of the lucky few, it's like probably the same odds as Las Vegas of hitting the jackpot and getting a track that actually sticks and that people call a hit. But when you do things live in front of people, it touches them in real time. And if you're really able to create chemistry where you are having a significant effect on people by collaborating, then I think that can be very impressive. Yeah. Say, for example, this Sunday, I have a party called Body and Soul in New York that has been running for 27 years. Nice. Okay? It's 3 DJs. It's Danny Krivit, Joe Closell, and myself. We tour around the world, and a lot of times the guy will go, well, what time is each of you going on? Because it hasn't entered their mind that actually we're a team. We play as a unit together at the same time. They are used to the model of, like, well, this guy does his little show, that guy, you know, and so on. So I think that, to me, same as with the live stems, the emphasis is I'm finding it more interesting to focus on things where I could see there being an improvised and live and genuine component. Whereas I would argue that to some degree the stuff that's done in the studio kind of keep going over the same part again and again and again and obsessing over every detail. I mean, you know, there's always this joke about engineers spending 2 days getting kick drum sound, right? I'm sure you've heard it before, right? I mean, maybe for some, you know, there's a degree of masochism that they feel it's really significantly, you know, contributing to their well-being. I'm not one of them. I seem to think that it's better to find ways to interact with people and to do things in the real-time zone. So now, it took me a really long time to understand the implications of doing live stems. Instead of me saying, I'm going to go in the studio and do one version, and then that's it. It's frozen. It's your version of that song, and it's forever that version. It's nothing bad about it. But once you really get your head around going in front of people and doing a live performance of stems in the moment, improvised, you realize that every time you go in front of people, if you want to play that song again, you can make a different version of that song. And it's not about releasing, because anyway, with 100, and I forget what the number was last year, but I thought it was over 100,000 new tracks ingested in Spotify system in a week, which means 400,000 a month, which means 4.8 million new tracks a year into Spotify. No one has time to listen to your track or give about it, okay? Mm-hmm. Whereas if I go in front of people and I do something unique, improvised and instant, I think there's more value to that than thinking, well, I mean, sure, I could quote you some mixes I've done where, you know, things collaboration-wise were special or interesting, but those happened 30 years ago or 20 years ago, and I'm not quite sure they're as relevant to what I'm talking about, which is now. And this idea of like, yeah, I'm going to make a record and that's always going to be the same version forever. That's worked great for everyone for 100 years. I'd say 1924 to 2024, we've got a nice 100-year slice of recorded music where the whole record business model was based on that one version that you then copied and duplicated and manufactured and sold to the public. It's been a great business model. Nowadays, not so great. Yeah. I mean, you may be running a record label on your own and gloriously telling me that you've sold 300 copies of your vinyl pressing and that I should pat you on the back. I'm going to tell you, 300 copies of your vinyl pressing is pretty sad, because I remember times where I was selling 300,000 copies of a record, okay? So it's all appropriate based on what's happening at the moment. And for me, I'm more excited about being able to go in front of people and doing live, unique, never to be repeated versions of things, which brings me kind of more in line with live performances, rather than only think about those fixed versions I do in the studio, which I spent an inordinate amount of time doing, and which only a few people are going to listen to, because they'll be moving on to the next, you know, sugar rush that comes because they get their notifications about this new release, and, you know, 100,000 a week. What do you do? Yeah. I mean, what's your remedy to that?
Well, I think you're right to do the experience. It also helps with the monetization. I mean, I'm not an artist, but from what I understand, people are getting fractions of a penny for a stream. That's not really a good way to live.
I mean, look.
So if you can do the live performance, it's actually a way to make money and pay your bills.
You know this artist from the UK, Salt?
Yeah, I love Salt.
All right. Well,
they gave it away. Yeah.
Salt put out 5 albums. Link, download, there you go. Here you have it. They completely went, yes, we understand. You want the music. Let's make the music and make it available for you. But I think at the end of the day, what I'm trying to point to is that we're coming at a time in, you know, sort of how things were, used to be okay, but now I think the paradigms are really changing, and with the advent of all these new tools like generative AI and all that, I think the old model is not necessarily going to be able to survive so much in the way it's done in the last 100 years or so. It's so incredibly disruptive. I think people haven't really gotten their head around yet the idea that you can have maybe it's not available today, but I'd say in 2, 3, 4 years down the road, I could see a generative AI model that makes music on the fly. At the moment, you're entering the room, there's a music generator, it creates music for you. Yeah. But that music will never be replicated. It'll always change. Right. And if you go somewhere else and there's another one of those engines, it might make another type of music. It can be programmed to react to certain stimuli, whether it's your mood, your body temperature, the things, the prompts you give it or whatever. But the point is, I think no matter what, people are going to get used to all these things. And it's not to say it's going to be still a lot of value to people doing live performances. Right. It's not to take anything away from incredible musicians stepping on stage and doing one-of-a-kind, unique, right, mesmerizing performances. They happen to be recorded. You want to listen to that record. Nothing wrong with it at all. But I just think we're at a time in history and the evolution of music where a lot of disruptive things are, if they're not happened, they haven't happened yet, they're about to. So to some degree, the reason I'm bringing this up is I feel that part of what I see available at the Momentary and some of the initiatives of things that are being talked about there, I think part of the people there are receptive to that. Yeah. And it kind of fills my heart with joy to know that sometimes I can have these conversations with other people and not be considered a total, rummaging fool or like deliriously, incoherent, because I think there's some people that are extremely conservative in their tastes and what they expect, and they're very much against any progress because they want to kind of
protect what may be lost.
Nostalgia has great value, and I'm totally happy for those who do that. But if anything, that is clearly not where I'm coming from. So
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, or even, in some genres, and I'm gonna take a little risk here. I listen to hip hop a lot. Yeah. And hip hop, like other forms of music you described, has been may become more image heavy, less about music and innovative, more about Instagram followers, all that stuff. But what's interesting is a lot of those artists are struggling. They're having to put out such a quantity just to get to ping those folks to try to make enough dollars to be relevant. Whereas maybe the solution would be to do things that are more ephemeral, like like rappers used to freestyle, or do things that were like you had to be there to catch it. Right?
Okay, let's have a hot take.
Let's do it. Let's hear the hot take.
Do you think that there are certain artists in hip hop that you prefer because they make hot mixtapes rather than the records they put out?
Sure. Yeah. But I'm more of a lyricist than it's not. There's certain art, pieces of poetry that pull me in. But I feel what you mean. Like the way a mixtape DJ will bring together a collection of songs, that order, that pacing, that those ebbs and flows are maybe more attractive than the songs that are included.
Because I just think in general, when it comes to hip hop, people, artists may feel a lot more constrained to cater to their audience or what they think their audience is expecting when they record an album. Whereas I think when they make a mixtape, they feel a lot freer, and they could do collabs with crazy partner artists and go beyond by featuring stuff that's completely out there, like Turkish funk, put it in.
Yes, we need
this,
more of that.
And just so the reason I'm bringing this up is I think at the end of the day, since you kept asking me this question, how do I keep reinventing or being interested in? I think the real key there is that we always have to follow creativity or our own instincts when it comes to what makes us and keeps us creative. And I feel that the mixtape is a perfect example of that, because in some way, for whatever reasons, there are less boundaries and less limitations placed on you when you are creating a mixtape that if you were working on just your own album. I mean, maybe there are some artists that defy that categorization. Yeah. I'm not sure, I don't really know. For example, I was really pleasantly surprised by the album that Andre 3000 dropped.
Yeah, it's a funky.
There was, he impressively risk taker, because I think a lot of people probably went like, what the hell is this? And why did he do, all these weird songs and all that? But I think artistically, I tend to respect people who do that a lot more, because they seem willing not just to be taking a chance for the sake of doing it, but because they have obviously some sort of artistic vision. And I feel given all that we have available at our fingertips with technology and the infinite possibilities of doing things, it's kind of sad in a way that so many people resort to more and more narrow kind of choices of what they want to present their audiences with. But hey, that's a greater conversation. Not sure it's one that we should be having right now.
Well, and we're probably running out of time here, but are there any other artists that you think, regardless of genre, that you think
Yusuf
keep
Days.
it fresh? Yusuf Days, yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't, I'm looking forward to going to a Salt concert, because all my friends who went to the Salt concert in London were just like, it was just like mind-blowing. Yeah. Like they just put so much into the production and the presentation and everything. We got to book Salt for the Momentary.
Yeah, we do. Let's do it. Well, just a couple wrap-up questions here as we wrap up, François K. Thanks again for joining us. Are there any upcoming projects that you're excited about that you want to have the opportunity to discuss with us?
I'm in the middle of finishing a remix for Dom Brans.
Oh, yeah.
That is hopefully going to be presented and available by the time we do this gig together in March. I'm also considering finally kind of putting the finishing touches on about, well, I don't want to say because it's kind of shameful, but I have a lot of music and that's in the vault that I could really keep working on and finish up. It's really up to me, actually. Lots and lots of new things on the horizon, some pretty amazing collaborations as well, but I'm not always at liberty to disclose everything. It's just like 2024 is already shaping up to be an incredible year. That is something I can tell you for sure. So I'm going to keep being excited, and hopefully if we see each other again, I'll have more to add to this.
Well, I'll definitely see you on March 8th. I'll be there at the Momentary, boogieing down to all the great artists that are going to be there. Again, a reminder, the Momentous Music Festival is going down at the Momentary. It's an electronic music festival, March 9th. Groups include Dirtwire, 100, Drums, Balkan Bump, Ben Frost, Cannibalists, and many more. And then there's an official pre-party featuring my man right here, François K, along with Dom Brans. That party's going down March 8th, 7 p.m. There'll be several other groups. For hip-hop fans who are listening to this show, the show will be supported by some local artists, including Classic Flow, friends of the show. They're a DJ and breakdancing collective, so that's pretty groovy. And they'll be there as well as part of that March 8th pre-party for the Momentous Festival. So come kick it with us in Bentonville on March 8th and 9th. Check out this new sound system that sounds like is in development. That's exciting.
Trust me, it's going to be awesome.
I can't wait. I have one last question for you, and maybe it's a weird one because I know you don't like to script things out, but what is I know a lot of DJs talk about the key to like starting off a good set. I've seen many interviews about that. What's the good way to ending a set? Because I always maybe I can apply that to ending this interview. How do you end a really good DJ set?
Well, it depends on what your expectation is.
Okay.
On one hand, you could be, do I want to set the tail end of what I'm doing to present the next person that's coming on? Or do I want to make an ego point of doing something really spectacular and bombastic so that I show how powerful I am and then make them look miserable after me? I'm not clear which, certain people might want to choose. In my personal case, I generally tend to try to speak to the person that comes on after me, figure out a little bit what they're expecting to do, and try to set them up so that it kind of flows naturally into the next person and kind of stand out of the way. And that, to me, would be the best compliment I could get, is that everything felt so smooth that no one even knew or noticed that it was not me playing anymore, that it was them who started.
Fantastic. Yeah, being a great collaborator here in this interview.
Again, and there you go.
Thanks so much for joining us on Here in Hip Hop. Hello again, François K. Where can folks find you online and all that stuff? Just everywhere? Is
everywhere.
There like a certain spot you
just
want to
look
put
me up on all my socials. And I have a Linktree /FKNYC, and you'll have all my links. They're all there.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, my friend. We're looking forward to March 8th.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
All right, thanks.